chairs, some other chairs for folks. All right, can people hear me on the microphone? Yeah, coming over the system, all right. And Carolyn, you want to try speaking from there? We are online.
Good morning, everyone. Glad you all stayed. Can you hear me fine? Okay.
Just one, either one. This is the bigger one, and that's just an abbreviated sort of thing. But that's in there. No, it's in there. I'm going to need a volunteer during the meeting to pass this microphone around to anybody that wants to speak. You're a gentleman and scholar. And it's important that for those that are speaking, it's important that anybody, I know it's small in here and we can all hear each other. It's important for you to speak in that microphone because the people watching online will only be able to hear what you have to say if you're talking in that microphone. So if you want to say something, this will also be a good way for us not to speak over each other, right? So if you want to say something, just raise your hand and speak in the microphone and kind of hold the microphone, close and talk fully so people can hear online. Thank you so much. Got my shirt hanging half out. I just saw that online. Button my coat here. All right, shall we start?
You want me to introduce you?
You want me to do the opening prayer? Mm-hmm. All right. We're going to go ahead and start our meeting now, and I've been asked to do an opening prayer. Dear Lord, we give thanks for this opportunity to gather every year as your congregation assembled the body of Christ. And we pray that the Holy Spirit works through us to make good decisions not only for the church this year, but for our mission to do your work in the world. In Christ's name we pray. Amen.
Thank you, Pastor Brian. First thing we have to do, according to our agenda, is establish a quorum to make sure that we're in good standing with the congregational meeting. And I want to thank everyone for coming today, and those on you online, thank you as well. If you're a member of Beaver Church, would you please raise your hand? We are good. We have a quorum, no problem. The next thing is the overview of the minutes, which are in your packet. This is the minutes from last year's 2023 congregational meeting. Just kind of review them. Basically, it was that we established a quorum, that we reviewed the budget and the expenditures that were made. We had a pastor's report. We had fundraising activities. The Gail Wells stepped down from the consistory, and the planning committee met and had a lot of activities for us. So as you go through that, briefly, are there any do you notice anything that needs to be corrected or added from last year's. Yes.
I don't know that it needs to be added, but just to
Oh,
make
microphone.
I don't know that it needs to be addressed or anything, but just for an update, if I do anything for this one, that my name is M-A-R-T-Y, not M-A-R-T-I.
Got it.
In the minutes, the third paragraph, it says the second was from Marty Smith. It's with a Y.
With a Y. I will let our secretary know that. She's sitting right there. Thank you, Marty. Any other additions or corrections that are noted? Hearing none, do I have a motion to accept the minutes as corrected? Pat?
And it looks like we got a second for Alex.
Pat Ferguson first and Alex seconded. Thank you both. All in favor of accepting the minutes as corrected, say aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Minutes approved. Thank you. The next thing is our 2023 revenue and investment, and Alice and Melissa will take you through that.
And real quick, before we get started with that, for those that took the abbreviated and those that took the full packet, I just want to note that something that's new that we did this year is we kind of did a abbreviated summary of a lot of this stuff, because I know that some folks, when they get a big spreadsheet in front of them, they kind of go blank. So if you see here for like 2023, you can see that, you know, essentially we were 3% above our revenue goal. So that's just a little cheat sheet, if you want to call it that, for some of the things that we're about to go over, both in terms of last year's financials and this year's financials coming up. You want to go, Alice, with the revenue?
All right. Those of you who are working off a full packet, the revenue is on 2 sheets. One of them says category overview at the top, and the other is something that looks like a spreadsheet. It has rows and columns, and it says month by month category analysis. So these are what you should be looking at right now, if you wish. Okay. Thanks to some very generous gifts and a lot of fundraising volunteer hours this year, we exceeded both our goal for general offering and our goal for fundraising. We had an excellent, well, not just an excellent garage sale in August, but Jeanette sells things on eBay and other places all year long, things where she thinks that we can get a better price on eBay as compared to just selling it at a garage sale. Jeanette takes over those items and she handles selling them for us and shipping them. And her efforts are listed on the category overview under fundraiser, garage sale, and eBay. Okay. The second line of category overview is miscellaneous, and you will see that it is a very large total, over $100,000. Okay, this is because the gift from the Marshall estate, which was over $100,000, okay, is listed on the miscellaneous line because it was not really something for general offering. Instead, this will be brought up later in this meeting, and the congregation will decide what to do with these funds. Okay. Also, you will notice the last line on category overview is endowment. This is a new category which has been added for gifts which are made directly to the endowment fund, which means that instead of our spending them in 1 year, we will draw income from them basically every year in order to help support the church and pay for the items in the budget. So in the last year, a generous gift was made of $15,000 to the endowment, and a similar gift was made to the maintenance fund. You can see that the building and maintenance donations were over $22,000 in the past year. Okay. Those were the high points I wanted to bring up for revenue. I wondered if anyone had any questions or any comments. You do? Okay.
Just a clarification, under the miscellaneous, that also includes the contributions to the Lingenfelter Scholarship Fund.
Good point. Thank you. All right. So do you want to talk about expenses?
Okay. So, the graph picture is where I'm going to go next. But I have a different sheet to talk from. So as you can see, we started out well. We went up from the end of last year, then we dived down, and then we went back up. So we ended up well at 303,000. What you don't see, because he didn't print the other page, is in a money market account is where the Marshall monies are now currently residing, and there's $102,032.83 sitting in a money market. And we also have a little over $2,000 in a CD, which is the Beaver Scholarship Fund that we give out in May. So any questions on investments? Okay. Now,
I think at this point, we had talked about calling for a vote for the revenue.
oh,
and
and the
endowment.
investments, okay.
Which is something Carolyn would need to do.
So you heard from Alice and you heard from Melissa for revenue and investments. Do I have a motion to accept those reports?
That's Dean has a first, and
Dean and
Alan has a
Alan.
second. All right.
All in favor of accepting those reports, say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed, say no. They're approved. Thank you, ladies.
Okay, let's see what your page looks like. All right, the one that says expenditures 2023. That one. Okay. Let's see, I don't know that there was anything really interesting. I guess we'll explain it. So the first page is mostly the expenses for the church, the building, you know, the lights on, the payroll, all of those sorts of things. And then if you flip over to the second page, these are all the designated donations that we made, usually out of benevolence. Sometimes we'll get a direct thing in for, let's see if I can find one. Yeah, the air conditioner that came in. There was a donation for the Peyton's project. The book study, you know, the money comes in for that, and then it goes out to pay for the books. Different. Oh, the Les Mis tickets that they went to in the January last year. We had to pay for that. So, and then the last page is more of the revenue that Alice just went over, and it breaks it down a little differently. And at the very bottom, it shows what we have in both our checking account and our savings account. And then I have that broken down into different categories, so I don't spend the money that I can't spend. Any questions? There's a lot there. Really? Yay.
This is expenses. We're voting on expenses again, this time. All in favor of accepting Melissa's expense report? No, I need a motion.
Yes. Bill makes a motion, Mindy
Bill
seconded.
and Mindy. Thank you both. Those in favor of accepting the expense report, please say aye. Those opposed, say nay. It's carried. Thank you, Melissa.
Yep. All right, well, that was all last year's stuff. That went pretty easily. I want to turn your attention real quick to either this, if you just grab the single page, it's this one here, or it's the page directly after the minutes. and it says BUCC 2023-2024 revenues, expenditures, budget, and maintenance summary. It's just the cheat sheet that I created. I'll make a joke today. It's supposed to be at Paul's expense, but he left. And you'll see that for some of the stuff that we're dealing with for 2024, there's a lot of asterisks this year, just like Michigan's championship win. All right. Just a quick recap from this summary sheet that we got. So our budgeted operating revenue and our actual operating revenue, we were 3% above our goal, so that's a good thing. The endowment grew by 19%, which is a great thing. And that had a lot to do with the good markets this year. And then our expenditures, we spent 2% under budget, so that's pretty good too. And that also says that we're pretty on in terms of what we're budgeting for in terms of revenue and expenses. And then I'm going to talk about this a little bit more further on, but it says a budgeted draw from endowment. We budget up to 5% every year to draw from the endowment to help with expenses for the year. So we were supposed to draw $12,794, and the actual draw was $0, which sounds great, and it is, but that's not 100% accurate. So I'm going to go over that later.
He's taking my cash cushion.
Yeah, I'm taking your couch cushion away. So if we look at 2024, the first thing I want to go over, and this is all leading up to voting on the budget, and I want to make sure everybody understands things before we go forward, because there's going to be a couple of different things that we need to vote on today. We need to vote on the budget. We need to vote on the very generous Marshall gift that was given to the church. And we also need to vote on some possible special maintenance projects as well. So it's a little bit more complicated budgetary-wise than normal this year. First, I want to point your attention to the fact that if you look on the first thing under 2024, it says budgeted operating revenue, $134,488. And that's a 9% decrease from 2023. And you might say, well, if you did so well with revenue in 2023, why are you decreasing it so much? And that is because, as many of you are acutely aware, it has been a very difficult year for Beaver Church in terms of people who have passed away. And although giving is confidential here at the church, and I have no access, only the treasurers have access to what people give, the treasurers were keenly aware that some of the people who have passed, who were no longer able to give to the church, were very generous in their giving. And there was an expectation that we would be looking at a $17,000 deficit from that giving. In other words, that's donations that came in over 2023 that we will not expect to come in 2024. And so normally, I mean, that does happen, right? You know, every year we get people that move away or they pass away, we get new members, you know, people increase their giving some, and it all kind of, evens out. But it was such a large thing this year, unexpectedly large, that the consistory decided it was best to budget some for it, which is different. So what the consistory did is it hoped, and it's budgeting for that, of that revenue that we're not expecting to get in, because unfortunately, those people who were very generous in the past can no longer do that. The church is budgeting that 30% of that revenue we will receive this year through hopefully increased giving from new members or new people attending the church. So that's kind of the goal we're shooting for. You know, we don't think that by any means we're going to hit 100% or anything like that, but we're shooting for 30% is what we feel is a realistic number, which if that's the case, then our overall revenue is decreased by 9% from last year to this year. And then if we move to expenditures for the budget, there is a 7% increase in the budget. And that's mainly for a couple of different things. One of those is a 4% raise for staff, which we have been giving 3 or 4% raises, which is good. Raises are great for staff. But of course, as many of you are aware, inflation has also been very high over the last couple of years, so the consistory felt like that was a reasonable number to give, especially considering inflation. Also, we've got some increased funds allocated for a new online advertising campaign that we're going to be doing this coming year through Facebook, targeting people to hopefully get them to either tune in on Facebook or come to the church. And actually, most of our new attendance has come through Facebook recently. Some of our new members have come through Facebook. So I think that's a good thing to do. And also there's some increased funds for basic maintenance now, since we'll need to pay for some snow removal and some other things that John Deal used to just do for free and donate to the church. But we'll have to pay some for it moving forward. There's an increased budget for sheet music, getting some new sheet music for both the bell choir and the regular choir. The regular choir is a little smaller than it used to be, so we're going to be looking for some unison sheet music and some two-part sheet music as opposed to the four-part, which we have a lot of. And then there's really just more of a technical accounting thing that we're just accounting for part of my health benefits differently than we did before, rather than we used to just pull, for part of my health benefits, we used to just pull a little bit out of savings when needed. Now that I'm getting older, that's happening more regularly. So we decided to just make it part of the regular budget. So that's a little increase in the budget from last year.
To state that differently, I used to keep a line in the checking savings account for his deductible, and we would reload it every January.
Yeah.
And now we're just going to, instead of having to keep that separate accounting, it's just an expenditure, so that'll make that easier for me.
So before I continue on, are there any questions about the changes to revenue or expenditures, those general things, or comments? All right, I'll move on. So the budgeted draw for the endowment is 4.6%, which is actually lower than last year, but it's actually a much higher draw monetarily. And the reason that is for really two things. One, the endowment's larger because it's gained in value, which is good. But the other thing is that there was a $15,000 donation made to it this year, and the consistory is budgeting, I should say hopefully budgeting, that the congregation will approve 60% of the Marshall gift that we're going to discuss later to go to the endowment, which will also significantly increase the endowment's value as well and allow us to pull a higher monetary amount every year and still stay below that 5%. So see, a lot of these things are kind of joined together, which is why it's a little complicated. Moving forward, there's another page here. So when I said earlier that, see, it's good I went and got my associates in accounting, right? When I said earlier that we had a zero draw from the endowment, and everybody's like, yay! Well, it wasn't quite true. And this has been true for a number of years, and it's just something I really kind of noticed this year in looking over things. Every year what we would do is we would lump our endowment and our excess checking and savings as kind of one fund. So let's just say the combination of our endowment and our excess savings and checking at the end of the year together was $100,000, okay? Let's just say that that was the case. And then we would say, okay, we'll take 5% of that, so we'll take up to $5,000 out of that. And then we'd say, okay. And then we'd go through the year, and we wouldn't actually be taking any from the endowment because we weren't doing any draws from the endowment, but that excess in the checking and savings was being depleted. Even though we were including it in our budgetary numbers, but we weren't really tracking the depletion of it in terms of counting it as a draw from our overall investments. So even though sometimes we were depleting it, some years it was good and we really didn't draw anything from either savings or the endowment. But some years we wouldn't draw anything from the endowment, but we did deplete our checking and savings a little bit from the year prior. And so it always made it look like we weren't taking anything, but in reality we probably were taking, a couple of percent every year. So to better keep track of that and have a more transparent view of the budget, what the consistory decided, and if the congregation approves the new budget, we'll be doing this going forward, is that the excess savings and checking, so that's basically the excess money that's in savings account and the checking account that's not already earmarked for something like the maintenance fund or something like that, that money at the end of the year, half of it will go towards the endowment and be put directly in endowment, which is good too, because technically we usually make more in returns when it's in the endowment. We made 19% on this year. And then the other half will be budgeted towards next year's budget, which is really what it gets used for anyway when it stays in checking and gets used for, budgetary items next year. And so with that being the case, we actually have an excess of about $28,000 in savings and checking that's not been allocated for anything. And so about $14,000 of that would go towards the endowment directly, and the other 14 would go towards the budget in terms of spendable assets for next year. And then we move on to the Marshall gift. And I'm just explaining everything, and then we'll go through the actual voting of stuff. Again, Neil Marshall, longtime member of the church, cousin of Jeanette over here from the Marshall clan. And Neil was a very nice man, quiet man, great mechanic, and did a bunch of stuff with auto racing, and really just interesting guy. And he attended church a lot as a kid, but as he got older, he didn't necessarily attend church regularly, but he would often be here for Christmas and Easter every year and be here with his partner and all that sort of stuff. And tragically, many of you might remember who were here, Neil died of COVID towards the middle to end of the COVID period. It was very sad because he was only in his, late 60s, early 70s, late 60s, 50s, and way too young, essentially. And, he was relatively healthy, and so he got COVID, and we thought, well, he'll be all right. But he wasn't. But Neil had told me, I visited with him in the hospital, and he told me, he's like, Pastor Brian, I know I don't attend a lot, but the church has always really meant a lot to me. And he said, I do attend Christmas and Easter some other times. It meant a lot to me when I was a kid, and it meant a lot to me that there was always a church down the street that I could go to if I needed to. And he said, so just so you know, there will be some funds left for the church in my state. And I said, well, thank you, Neil, whatever we're grateful for, Well, lo and behold, what the church was given was actually some property. And essentially, once that property sold and all the liens and everything like that were figured out, the remainder of it was given to the church. And that ended up being $102,000, which was a very significant, very unexpected gift. Now, many gifts, especially of that size when they're given, are often given with
Conditions.
Conditions, right, or restrictions is sometimes how they're called. So, for instance, like somebody, Annette's family, many people remember Annette Martz, they gave about $6,000 for the new air conditioning for the sanctuary. So that was a donation that was donated for a specific purpose, $6,000 something that was donated for an air conditioning, which has to be used for that, right? We can't just use it for something else. This is a donation that had no conditions on it at all, so it can be used forever. I mean, not forever, for whatever the church wants. And also, because of the size, the consistory is able to do things basically that aren't in the budget up to about $5,000. Well, $5,000 is what's in the bylaws. So, if we had gotten a $4,000 gift that was unrestricted, the consistory could just decide, okay, well, we'll decide what to do with it. We don't need to go to the congregation. But anything above $5,000 really in terms of unrestricted revenue or expenses needs to go to the congregation. And so what we did is we decided just to put it in a money market account temporarily until the congregation could approve it. What the consistory is recommending, after thinking about things a lot, but obviously it's up to the congregation, is that 60% of this gift be given to the endowment. And the endowment is the money that we have that grows in investments over the years, and that we're able to do two things with. One, we're able to take a percentage of every year to help with the budget, and two is essentially an emergency fund in case there is anything big that happens, like, I don't know, the whole roof needs to be replaced or something like that. Hopefully not again in my time here, at least. So it's a good thing for a church to have. That way that money would continue to be able to be used and be useful to the church for many, many, many years to come. And then the other 40% of it would be given to our special maintenance fund. So we have a kind of a basic maintenance fund and a special maintenance fund. The basic maintenance fund, handles the things like elevator inspections, stuff like that we expect to pay every year, plus some extra to take care of, there's a couple $100 for painting or needing something for the shed or whatever. But large projects, several $1,000 projects, those will come out of our special maintenance fund, which is like a capital fund that's kept separately in savings. So the consistory is suggesting that the other 40% go to that special maintenance fund, in particular to pay for a couple of things this year, plus leave us a little cushion after we pay for those things for some other future projects as well. Any questions about the Marshall gift before I move on to the special projects? Yes, is there a microphone for Alex back there?
Just a clarification on what I saw here and what you've said. 60% will go to the endowment, 40% allocation towards special projects, right?
Right.
Okay. I just needed to clear that in my head.
Sure.
Because sometimes, Pastor Brian, with a 60% allocation of the Marshall gift to the endowment, what is the projection for 2024 as far as interest, and what would that projection be at,
Right.
instead
Well,
of...
so it's roughly $60,000 that would go to the endowment. I mean, if we made 19%, I don't know what the market's going to be next year, but let's just say it was the same as this past year, then we would actually grow that $60,000 by about, $11,500, give or take, if we had the same, gain. It could also lose money, because that's the market. But over time, with the investments that we have, we should expect to get, 7-8% return over the long run. So certainly it would do much more in terms of gaining revenue that the church could use in the future if it's in the endowment versus just sitting in a checking or savings account.
Thank you for the clarification.
Mm-hmm. Any other questions before moving forward? All right, so we got 2 special maintenance projects. Now, again, these are 2 projects that we think will probably, well, I know one for sure, will cost over $5,000, which means they need to be voted on by the congregation. Anything less than that, the consistory can vote on itself. So if you have something you want to have done, like I know some people have wanted to repaint that metal, that tin molding that's around the front door, just because we don't vote on that today doesn't mean we can't do that. That's going to be a small project. That's going to be us and some volunteers and some paint. Cost, $200 at the most. So that's something that can be approved by the consistory. If it's low enough, it can even just come out of basic maintenance. And if you have some other projects around that you want to see done, it doesn't mean we can't do those. It's just that these are really big projects that we think are going to be more than a $5,000 expense. So the 2 projects that we're looking at, one, and this is the really big one, is repaving the parking lot. So the parking lot, when I asked to get a quote for getting it sealed last, and I've kind of been getting this for the last couple of times we've had it sealed, and usually we get it sealed every couple of years. I've been hearing, hey, these cracks are getting much bigger, much worse. We're happy to put crack filler and seal it, but at some point it's really just going to be cosmetic. We're not, saving anything with the asphalt. And we've been having patches that have really deteriorated where we've had to put patches down and, it's not getting better. Is it critical this minute? No. I mean, it's not like any of us are going through huge potholes or anything like that. Will it continue to deteriorate? Is it probably something that needs to be dealt with in the next 5, 6, 7 years? Probably yes. And so it was felt that since we're at a moment right now where we do have this generous donation, it makes sense to perhaps use some of it for a project that we know is going to be big, that we know is going to be needed to be done in the next 5 years or so. And so that project is to redo the parking lot, which means what they would do is they'd come in and they would completely tear off, the first couple of inches of the asphalt. They would put down new asphalt. They would stripe everything. They'd wait a couple of months for the asphalt to cure. They'd come back. They'd reseal everything, and then they'd restripe it. Now, if you've ever had your driveway done, you'll know that's not necessarily a cheap thing, especially for something the size of our parking lot. So I did get a quote on it last year, and that is $45,425. Now, the good news is with money that we already had in the maintenance, special maintenance, if we put that 40% from the Marshall Fund in there, plus the $15,000 gift that we had towards the maintenance fund, we can afford that this year just from the special maintenance fund if we choose to do that. Now, if we did that, what we'd do is we'd ask the congregation to authorize up to an expenditure of $48,000 for the project, which would give a little breathing room because it might be a little bit more expensive from one year to the next. And we'd also get a quote from 3 major companies before we proceeded with the project. Any questions we're not voting on it yet, but we will. Any questions about this first project?
Pastor Brian, can you tell us a little bit more about the timeline about this project? What kind of interruptions is it going to cause? And
So you want to do this with a larger company. This is not something you hire, a single contractor to do. And this is something that, one of the people we'd get quotes from is Hauser Asphalt, and there's another one that's in Xenia that we get a quote from. But essentially what they do, and what we do is we get the quote now and we get it lined up because, their schedules will start to fill up because this is something they do in the warmer months. And as it warms up, and we're finally beyond the snow phase, they would come in and, within 1 week, they'll be able to strip everything and put new asphalt on and line it they can at least do the asphalt for sure within a week. They might have a second week to do the line. So it shouldn't affect our ability to use it because we mainly only use it on Sundays. There is an AA meeting that meets on Tuesdays, but Thursdays, but it's a very small meeting. And actually, to be honest, if we had them come in and start on Monday, they could probably even have it done by Thursday. I think that there would be a time period where you'd have to not drive on it, but I think that's just a couple of days. So it's something that I think that if we were a busy organization to have people in here every day, I think that would be more of a concern. But since we mainly only use it once a week, I think we'll be able to pretty easily fit it in. And then once that asphalt's down, like I said, it cures for 3 months. And it's a similar sort of thing when they come and seal it. They come in early in the week and they seal it, and you wait a couple of days, and by Sunday we'll be able to use it. Got questions up here. Bill, wait for the microphone if you don't mind.
One thing to consider, and anybody that's been around the church during the week knows that there's a whole mess of traffic that basically makes U-turns in our lots, including a school bus.
Yes.
So we would have to protect the entrances somehow during the process.
Yeah, so one of the things that we would definitely do, both for the 2 front entrances and the entrance into the cemetery, is we would need to, with this pretty significant way, mark those off for no entry. Yeah, for sure.
I just want to say that I think Neil would really appreciate us using some of his funds to do this project.
Okay.
My other concern is the school buses.
Yeah.
Like he said, they'll come through and sit in the parking lot. They weigh so much money,
Yeah.
and if you're going to put a new parking lot out there, I think maybe notify transportation of the schools and say,
Yeah, that's a good idea.
Sorry, no turns here.
And I think it's not, school bus drivers are wonderful people. We have some school bus drivers that have been church members. So this is not a negative statement against school bus drivers in any way, shape, or form. But I can tell you that I'm pretty sure that the school bus drivers that come here do so to take a smoke break. So they park their buses and they get out and they smoke in the parking lot and they get back in their buses. Not judging them, but I think you're right, Kathy, that if we invest $45,000 in a new parking lot, especially if we need time for it to fully cure, then I think it would be a good idea. And I think it's the buses from that come up here from, what's the new school that's up that way, Ankeny? I think it's the ones that come from that direction. But I would need to call Beaver Creek Schools and say, what's that? Yeah, I agree. And say, we appreciate the schools, we support them, but school buses are no longer able to park and wait in our parking lot.
Well, another thing I think is part of the staging process, you have 27 school buses at the school that are supposed to be in order.
Yeah.
And if one of these guys is running 5 minutes ahead of schedule, he pauses in our parking lot.
I don't think so, no. No, I've watched when they stop and what they do and how long they're here, and it's not that. The way of the bus, I agree. Any other questions or comments about this? This is good for us to get this, talk about this before we make any sort of votes on
Yeah,
it.
this just occurred to me. We have several trees that grow fairly close to the parking lot. Do we know if they're affecting the parking lot in any way, like the roots underneath?
That would be something we would need to talk with the company about before we did it, and we might need to do some trimming of that sort of stuff before we did it.
Okay.
They're not maples. Maples are the worst for coming up.
Yeah. And they also might take care of part of that when they do because they come in with a big grinder, so that might grind through the roots as well. I don't know. Any other questions or comments?
This is just a comment. We have to realize that if oil and petroleum goes up in cost, the blacktop will go up in
Yeah.
cost because there is a byproduct
Yeah.
of petroleum, sticky, that binds all that together.
Yeah.
So,
And right now, I think petroleum's not too bad. So it might be a good idea to do it now, is what you're saying. Any other questions or comments? All right, let me move on to the second. Like I said, we'll be voting on these later. The second maintenance project is to replace and just to know, our parking lot's about 25 years old since it's been done. So, that's a good long time for a parking lot before it gets new asphalt. The next is our existing fire alarm, which I don't want to alarm anybody, no pun intended, but it does work. It does have its basic function. However, it really doesn't work so well overall.
It goes off at 2 a.m., and
yes.
Brian has to come over here and make sure there's no fire.
It goes off, and there's a lot of false alarms. There's an
A lot.
issue with ground faults in it. When we've had people out to take a look at it, they're like, "Man, we could trace all the wires in this building and never find that ground fault." The best thing is to really do a new system. I've heard that from 2 different people. I had to come out and take a look at it. So that's why it's beeping all the time, because there's literally within a week, 312 ground faults. Thankfully, the ground faults don't actually trip the alarm system, just trip the panel. And then the other thing is that I've got a collection, I think I have about 3 left, of the smoke heads that I bought on eBay from somebody's garage or something like that. The smoke heads, those little, see that yellow round thing up there? They don't make those anymore. I mean, they make smoke heads, but not that particular one that works with our system. And so anytime one of those goes bad, which we're in that time when they do that, after being 25 years old, because they were installed when the addition was put on in 1999. Anytime those go bad, we have to replace them with a new smoke head. I only got 3, and I don't know where to get any others. And so I think it's high time that we replace the fire alarm system with a more modern, functional fire alarm system. I was given a rough quote of $5,000 to do that from one of the companies that we work with. And so I'm asking for up to $6,500 to be approved. I think that should cover it. And again, we'd get quotes from multiple companies when we did that. And that's just kind of like a safety thing going forward, because if we get to a point where we don't have an ability to replace the smoke head, first of all, if you don't have a smoke head in there, it makes the alarm system go off all the time. It's not something we want to be in that situation. We'd have to replace it anyway at that point. And then we'd be replacing it in a situation where we don't have a functioning fire alarm, which is not a good thing. BB's got a question up here, I think.
I'm just curious, do we have a sprinkler system?
We do not have a sprinkler system. We are not required by code to have a sprinkler system for our building. Thank the Lord, because it would cost a heck of a lot more than the parking lot. Yeah.
What about downstairs? Do we have one down there?
No sprinkler system
Okay.
in the building. And I am not an expert on codes or anything, but it just has to do with what was here before and what the general use of it is, and if people live here or not. Like things like daycares have to have sprinkler systems, but for what we use it for, we do not need a sprinkler system. Any other general questions or comments about the fire alarm? All righty. So even if we were, and another thing that we did, so part of the money that was given towards the special maintenance project, the families that gave it did also want to have some of it used towards the sound system. So there's been an upgrade in microphones. We've got a new microphone for here. I've got a new lapel microphone, which has helped with sound cutting out online. The choir microphone is amazing. The choir sounds great with it. Before, we were just sort of honing in on one person, and no matter how great they are, they're not going to sound as good as a whole choir together, especially on me. So that's helped a lot. And we got a new microphone for the bell choir as well. So there was some money already spent on that, but that was per the request of the family that made that donation. So with that money spent, plus if we spent the maximum $48,000 in the parking lot, plus if we spent the maximum $6,500 on the fire alarm system, we would still, at the end of the year, have about $4,000 left in the special maintenance fund. Of course, the church can always move money into it if they want, for any purpose, moving forward, but that's where we would be at. That's all my special explanations. That's all my asterisks. Now we would vote on things. Any questions before we get to the voting?
Nobody asked the question, but I will say we don't have any repairs on the current fire alarm system, so there was no expenses in the budget on that previously.
Right. Mm-hmm. I guess we would need to, Carolyn, if you wouldn't mind calling for motions for, we would need to approve separately the budget, the allocation of the Marshall gift, and separately the two large projects as well.
Okay, so we have 3 votes. So I'm going to need motions for all 3.
4, actually. For the budget, the Marshall gift, and then each of the special projects.
Oh, each one separately?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Gotcha. Okay. First of all, for the budget, the 2024 budget, as explained by Pastor Brian and Melissa, do I have a motion to accept that budget for 2024? Alex and Jerry, sorry, thank you. All those in favor of accepting that budget, say aye. Opposed? Nay? Hearing none, the budget will be approved. Second is voting on the Marshall gift of $100,000, which is extremely generous, of putting 60% in the endowment and 40% in the special projects. Do I have a motion? Jenny? And a second? Thank you, Marty, with a Y. All those in favor say aye. Nay? Oh, it's approved. And then we have 2 special projects, large maintenance projects. The first one being the parking lot. Do I have a motion to agree to put $48,000, I believe it was, in the parking lot fund? Alan for a first and Dean seconding it. All those in favor say aye. Anyone opposed? Nay? That's approved. And the second maintenance project was the fire alarm system. Do I have a motion for Brian and Nancy? Thank you. All in favor say aye. And opposed? Nay? That's approved. Thank you. Did I get all those motions?
Now we got consistory.
Consistory. Okay.
We're getting close, folks.
Okay. For our consistory, it consists of 10 members, and we have Melissa term limited. So she is stepping down, but she's still going to be our treasurer. We're not letting her off the hook. So, but we're going to replace her when we had a volunteer already step forward, which was Doug Gowdy. Thank you, Doug. But for our motion to accept the consistory members and vote on them, the others would be myself, Charlie Williams, Gretchen Weiler, and Mindy agreeing to run for an additional 2 years. And
The other, so there's 10 members, but it's 2-year terms that
Right.
that are counterset. So every year there's 5,
so, and then the
votes.
others are finishing their second
Right.
year. So are there any other nominations from the floor, or a person that has agreed or wishing to be on consistory?
We don't need one, but if you really feel like you need to run, you're welcome to.
Seeing none, we'll accept the slate as given. So all those in, do I have to have a motion?
Yeah.
A motion to accept the consistory slate, Pat, and a second?
Bobby?
Thank you, Bobby. All those in favor of accepting the consistory members as listed? Say aye. And negative? No? Yes, I am. I am.
I have a feeling, though, Carolyn probably doesn't want to be president next year.
We'll
so-
see. No,
Okay.
Tom.
Maybe she does.
Tom. Okay.
No, I promised Doug he doesn't have to be an officer his first year. I made him a promise.
So then we have a new consistory slate with Doug added. So that takes care of the consistory, right?
Yep.
Okay, now you've got here something about president's comments. Okay, that's open mic for Carolyn. First of all, I want to thank everyone for everything you do all year long. And those of you watching online, thank you too. Sometimes you're here, sometimes you're watching online, and we really appreciate the Facebook aspect. Thanks to Brian and Amelia for getting that all set up for us. Without the volunteers, we would be in a world of hurt. We have the kitchen, we have the meals, we have the maintenance group. Thank you, Dean, for being on that. And Steve Filer, I know he does things that we don't even know, but they're getting done. Birthday cards. We have people mowing the lawns. We have the newsletter that goes out. Thank you, Ruth, and Alice, and other people that I'm not even aware of. We have the website. There's a webmaster somewhere that does that for us. We have Jeanette doing the children's moment. We have the choir. We have the bell choir. We have a special singer that leads Happy Birthday, Alan. Thank you. We have fundraising events. Melissa is a chicken and noodle queen. We have staff. We have music, Karen, Alex. We have Margaret, who keeps the place clean and spotless. We have Sunday school teachers. All of these people are invaluable, and with them, we would really be in a world of hurt. Amelia is back. She's not back there right now, but every Sunday I see her sitting quietly. She keeps us online. She keeps our sound going. She keeps Brian doing what he needs to do.
That's a full-time job, I'll tell you what.
We also have substitutes there with Bill and Melissa taking charge when she's not available. And our consistory members we keep mentioning, but I want to just re-mention their names. Tom Rawls, Shirley Nelson, Melissa Baumbarger, Alice Clausing, Mindy Severinson, Charlie Williams, Jeanette Papacek, Gretchen Weiler, and now Doug Gowdy. Thank you all. And at the meeting on Tuesday, we do have a meeting on Tuesday, I'm going to give you each an apple, because you are the apples of my eye. Okay? Pastor Brian, you're going to get one too.
Thank
Okay.
you.
And the other person that I want to especially thank is Pastor Brian. The list of things that he does for this church is too long to list. It's just an incredible amount. From plumber to electrician to gopher, whatever it is, he does, and he doesn't even tell us a lot of the stuff he does. Thank you. We're so lucky to have you.
Thank you.
Okay?
I'm very lucky to be here, too.
That's my minute. Now I'm going to turn it over to Melissa for the planning committee comments.
Yeah, it was a surprise that I got to do this part. Found that out this week. So the planning committee has had many names over the years. It was the planning meeting, the worship meeting. My favorite term was the dream team, but that died several years ago. So we meet the third Tuesday of the month, and we discuss various things. A lot of it at the beginning was about COVID. What should we do? What can we bring back into worship? What goes out into worship? We also do special Sundays, and we discuss those, so that's why we have a Luau Sunday.
there are different things when the Christmas is, when the impromptu pageant will occur, if we'll do it again this year. We always seem to do it. When the cantatas will be. It also does the various outreaches with the charities, with Washington UCC, the shoe boxes that we've done. And we also discuss what fundraisers we're going to do, when they should occur. So the chicken noodle, the garage sale, the cookie walk. We also have the Kroger fundraiser. I don't know if anybody, you're all aware of that, but if you put your Kroger card to Beaver UCC, a percentage of everything you buy at Kroger comes back to us. We get a check about once a quarter. It's around $100 right now. We can get those signed up. How do you join the committee? You tell Brian, and he'll send you an email, because we're online on Zoom on Tuesdays at 7 o'clock, third Tuesday. Everybody is welcome. Please come.
Thank you very much, Melissa. Excellent job. And it really is, a committee where, it's a very informal committee. We don't even have a chair or anything like that. I know for those of you that are real Robert's Rules of Orders, that might, bother you, but we just basically get together and, we do a lot of discussion and a lot of figuring things out that saves, especially the consistory, a lot of time, because they don't have to deal with a lot of the minutia that sort of we talk through. And then the planning committee will present things to the consistory that need to be approved, in a concise fashion. So yeah, anybody's welcome, and more opinions, the merrier. As far as my comments, I'd like to say that the first thing I'd just like to point out is it's been a very, very difficult year. I think it's been a difficult year for everybody. It has been the most members of this church to pass away in a single year in the time I've been here. I'm just going to list them off. And you can see this in the Year in Review, which is a wonderful document that Ruth kindly puts together for us every year. That's a great outline of things that have happened. But Don Parkinson, Annette Martz, Viola Robertson, Gene Harshman, Andrew Lingenfelder, Gail Wells, John Deal, and Bob Tobias, and then of course, just recently in early January, Tom Maloney as well. And that's been a very difficult thing, I think, on everybody. Certainly a difficult thing for me, a difficult thing, especially for long-term members that knew basically everybody on this list well. Some of them had, gatherings. Some of them had kids that played with each other, all that sort of stuff over the years. And so it's been a tough thing, especially on the back of COVID, which we're still kind of dealing with, but thankfully things are getting much better. And it's been basically a headwind, I think, for the church in general, COVID has. We didn't get many visitors during the height of COVID. That wasn't a time people visited churches. We did get some people through Facebook, which was nice. But of course, the church always has a transition year after year. Obviously, the church looks different, very much different now from what it looked 50 years ago. But there's a deficit that needs to be made up in terms of not only people that haven't been visiting the church from COVID, but also because of all the losses that we've had, sadly, recently. And so that's one of the reasons that we're looking to do the advertising campaign. And then, of course, a big thing that everyone else can do is invite people to church. They say that, there's different studies out there, but they say something like 60 or 70% of the people that come to a church come because somebody from that church invited them. So as much advertising and stuff as we do, your invite, especially, hopefully, if you like the church, which I think you do because you're here, and that enthusiasm that you have for the church is important in having new people, come here. And it's not about numbers. It's not about, we need a certain number. Look, if I wanted to be pastor of some giant church, I would, have moved on to something that's not, a small, historically country church. Beaver Church, I don't think, is ever going to be the Crystal Cathedral. And I think probably you all are fine with that. I certainly am fine with that. But, the reality of the situation is that to maintain the church, both in terms of volunteerism and revenue and all that sorts of things, so that the church can be there for future generations as a place where people can come and hear Christ's message and find, love and acceptance. For it to be there, we do have to have a certain number of people, supporting and participating with the congregation to do that. So that's something that, I plan on working on especially this coming year. And of course, any help that I can get in that from you guys is very, very much appreciated. One of the things that we are going to be doing as part of that is, hopefully, I'm crossing my fingers for February 18th, but we're going to have a photo shoot. I'm going to have a photographer come in and take some photos of the service while it's going on, some of our fellowship downstairs and things like that. And then we're going to use those with some captions and some other stuff to do a Facebook campaign that does regular monthly advertising. So that's something that we'll be working on. And we'll probably do 2 photo shoots, one on February 18th and then one in the warmer weather, maybe for like the Luau Sunday or something like that. That's just one thing that, I wanted to talk about. But, I think that despite the difficulties that we had, let's face it, we had COVID, and then we had the roof come off, and then we had, a very tragic year. We've been through a lot, but the thing that I see time and time again is the strength and love and the caring of this church. And that no matter what we've faced, we've come together as a group of people to support each other, support one another through that. And, in my mind, that's what a church really is for. It's for learning about God and learning about Christ and learning about your relationship and salvation. But, Christ calls on us to love each other. That's our basically main day-to-day mission. And I think that we do that well at Beaver Church. It's one of the things that people talk about a lot when they become members here, that they feel that people do actually care about them, that they're not just, some person in some pew, watching a program. And it's honestly that and all the wonderful people, some of which sadly were on the list that I mentioned before, that are part of this congregation, that has made me never look to go anyplace else, because I truly feel that, God's work is being done here. And, just like Jonah, if God tells me to go someplace else, I'll probably have to follow. But so far, God's been pretty silent on that. So I think that means God's telling me to stay here, as long as God's not telling you something different. We did manage to do a lot of wonderful things. If you look through the list that, Ruth put together, we had several book studies. One fun one we had was we did the Les Mis, where we went and saw Les Mis after we did the book study about it. And basically, it was a book study on Les Mis and theology within spiritual issues within Les Mis. We had a couple other wonderful things. We tried some pizza and game nights that we're going to do. That we're going to do another one in February, like I said. Of course, who can resist the chicken and noodle fundraisers and the cookie walk, all the lunches we have, certainly a well-fed congregation. I often joke this should be called the Church of the Fishes and Loaves. So, we're doing a lot of good, wonderful things for people, and a lot of things for people outside the church. Tom's Pan Ohio Hope, we just put a food pantry, outside that's utilized by the community. We, of course, do things during the Christmas season with the shoe boxes and helping out all the families down in Cincinnati that we do every year. So we're doing some good things, church, I guess is what I want to say. That basically sums up what I wanted to talk about today. Anybody got any questions for me before Carolyn brings up any new business? All right.
The remaining item on our agenda is new business. So if anyone has anything they would like to mention or bring forward as a concern or a joy, now is your time. Do I hear any hands up? New business. We must have covered it good.
Yeah, or they're tired of hearing us talk, either one.
Yeah. In that case, we'll adjourn the meeting with a closing prayer by Pastor Brian.
Thank you. Dear Lord, we give thanks for this day, for the ability for us to come together and have these discussions. Most of all, though, we give thanks for the ability to come together each week and other times to know your love and to share your love with those here and others outside our walls, to do your work as you have called us to do, to be your disciples, to follow your path. And may we do so with a spirit in our heart and praise on our voice. In Christ's name we pray. Amen.
Thank you for coming, everyone.
Thank you. Thank you, Austin. People that are mainly in charge of it are Bill, Doug Gowdy. Doug does a lot. Bill does a lot. Bill might not do as much as Doug does DJ. Tom Walls also does stuff as well.